Wow, that's really good. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think that is absolutely fantastic. I'm gonna make another batch of this. That's fantastic. Welcome to Grow and Preserve. We are in the kitchen again today for a quick, hopefully really fun, really tasty canning recipe. We will see. I have a new cookbook that I just got from Amazon yesterday. It is called Preserving with a Purpose, Next Generation Canning Recipes and Kitchen Wisdom. Okay, there's the cookbook. Now, this will be the first recipe that I'm trying from this canning book. So what I want to tell you, first of all, is I'm not quite ready to recommend the cookbook yet, if that is something you're looking for. I will say that it is very much a rebel canning book, very much a rebel canning book. I'm no stranger to rebel canning, and you know, I'm all for something that makes sense to can. However, there are some recipes in this book that make me a little squeamish. So I don't know how I'm going to feel about it overall, but there are a few recipes that just sound great to me. So I'm going to go through probably over the next few weeks, maybe 3 or 4 recipes from the book, and we can see what we think. Now this particular recipe is the one that got my attention and said, okay, I'm going to buy that book. Now I buy a lot of canning books. So I don't know how I feel about this one yet. I will say that lots of the recipes do follow safe canning principles. Some of them do not. So there are some things that make sense to me that I do. I always tell you if I'm going off script. So this one is off script, but I think we're going to be fine. I think it's important if you're going to do any of the water bath canning recipes in this book that you have pH strips handy. And I would say that's true for any canning recipe book or anything off the internet or whatever that's water bath canning that doesn't come out of, you know, one of the ones that we do know has been thoroughly tested. So 4.6 below on the pH is what we're looking for. I'll test this one today and we'll see how we do, but just reading the recipe, I don't have any concerns that it's going to be an issue. So I think this one is going to be fine following safe canning, and let's go. All right, we are doing bruschetta in a jar. You can see I've earmarked several recipes I'm going to try. A couple of those for you. A couple of them, maybe you'll see. Okay, bruschetta in a jar. Now, what I really liked about this one, and I wanted to tell you, I'm going to link the Amazon link, as I said before, but the reason I'm doing that at this early stage in my evaluation of the cookbook is because that is one of the recipes that is on the free preview. So that is a recipe I read, and I thought, okay, I will buy that book. And I'm happy I did. I think it could be a good resource. So I will link that for the recipe. All right, so we're going to do bruschetta in a jar, and it uses cherry tomatoes. That's very exciting because often, you know, I spend all summer long dehydrating my cherry tomatoes, and we eat them, you know, just with dinner kind of thing. I like to roast them. I like to eat them as a snack. I eat them in the garden, all that kind of stuff. But then you start to get a lot of cherry tomatoes, and by the end of the season, you're like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? So the past couple of years, I've been sticking them in the freezer and then never using them from frozen, except to throw into, you know, a sauce or something like that. So I think we're going to try this year. I have enough cherry tomatoes today for half of a batch of this. So it says that a full batch makes 5 to 6 pints. So I'm planning on 5 to 6 half pints. I'm going to make one change that may give me a little bit less than what she gets out of hers. She just adds her cherry tomatoes whole to the jar. That worries me just a little bit because I want to make sure that inside the tomato has the same pH level that's safe as outside of the tomato. So I'm actually going to slice mine in half, and that makes me significantly more comfortable. I have thoroughly washed these. They've been soaking in some vinegar water for about 10 minutes. They've been washed. I've thoroughly checked over everything. I have no little bug stings. We get a lot of leaf-footed bugs here, and they sting a fruit, and you don't notice it till it's inside. And anyway, I didn't want any of that in here. All my skins are in good shape. I don't have any splitting on any of these. They all seem to be perfect. I think they're going to be beautiful in the jar. They're all tasty, grape tomatoes. So I think it's going to be an excellent, excellent thing to try. So I have right now my jars heating up in my steam canner, and we are going to get to work on the brine so that that can be heating up, and the sugar, or I'm using allulose, but the sugar is what the recipe calls for, so that that can be dissolving in the brine. So let's talk about the vinegar that we're using in this brine. Vinegar is what is going to do the preservation of this. So it's important to have 5% at least acidity. So it calls for white vinegar and balsamic vinegar. So normal white vinegar, this is just distilled white vinegar. This is 5% acidity, perfect for canning. Not necessarily the flavor I was going for in this one. So I think I'm going to use white wine vinegar. Now, here's where you have to pay attention. This acidity level is 7%. So if it had come in at 3%, 4%, something like that, my ratios of my pH balance would be off for this. This is at 7%, so I'm feeling pretty good that my pH is going to be great on this one. Now, the other thing it calls for is balsamic vinegar, which is a 6% acidity rate. At least the two that I have here, these are the only two I really use. This is white, and this is regular dark balsamic vinegar. Both of these are 6% acidity. So I kind of really, because of how it's going to look in the jar, I bounce back and forth. Do I want white so it's clearer? Won't be completely clear because this has a little tint to it. This has a little tint to it. Or do I want to add the dark that may take away some of the pretty? I don't know. I am not sure yet. So we're going to see. I may split it up, do half and half, so it's not quite so dark, but the flavor is just a little bit different on these two. So we'll see on that one. Now I want to show you another vinegar that I'm not considering using in this recipe, but it is one I'm going to use in another recipe coming up where I'm going to have to pay very close attention to my pH. This is rice vinegar, and this is a, 4.2% acidity. So that is below the regular canning standard for all of the canning recipe. It needs to be at least 5. This is 4.2. So just pay attention to whatever your vinegar you're going to use, whatever acidity level it is. Make sure it's 5.0 or higher, or you're really experienced and careful and have measuring strips for pH and all that kind of good stuff. So I'm not using that one today. Let's get the water in. So I'm doing half a batch, so that'll be 2 cups of water. It says 1 cup of white vinegar. So I'm going to use half a cup of white wine vinegar. Again, this is 7% acidity. Half a cup for my half batch. All right, half a cup. That's going in. Now, here's decision time on the balsamic vinegar. I only need, for a half batch, a 1/4 cup. Love balsamic vinegar. It smells so darn good. Let's see what I think when I smell these two, which one I want to use. So this one is much lighter. This one smells heavier, sweeter. It smells amazing, just amazing. I use this one a lot on salads with, like, if I put apples or peaches or some other kind of fruit in there so that the fruit doesn't look discolored in the salad. So I do love a white balsamic vinegar. I think I'm just gonna go with it and use the dark one and hope that my jars still look pretty. I think they will. Okay, so I need 1/4 cup for my half batch. Whoa. Okay, 1/4 cup. I can hear my steamer coming up to temperature, so that's great. It got kind of dark. We'll see if that was the right decision. All right, salt. Tablespoon for a full batch. I'm going to use half a tablespoon, so that'll be 1.5 teaspoons. 1.5. And for a full recipe is 1 cup of sugar. So half a cup of sugar for a half batch. I'm using allulose. As I always tell you, it is 70% of sweetest sugar. This is going to be to your taste. I'm going to start with half a cup because that balsamic vinegar I find is pretty sweet. So half a cup. And that's it for the brine. So I'm going to get this on the burner, get it stirred up a bit, and we'll wait for that to come up to a boil. So as I mentioned, the recipe calls for whole cherry tomatoes. I'm going to slice mine in half so that I know that the inside is being preserved just as well as the outside. The other thing she says about the cherry tomatoes is that they will expand over time as they absorb the vinegar and sugar if you leave them whole. So I'm sure she's right about that. I imagine she's right about that. But that didn't sound, I didn't want to open it up and have my little tomatoes explode, basically, you know, with the skins broken and everything like that. And I also didn't want to put one of these tomatoes on a piece of toast to eat it like, you know, the typical bruschetta, and squish it down and have all this liquid come out on my toast. So I didn't want that either. So I am cutting them in half. So the rest of the seasonings for this, we're going to put in the jars. So it says to put the tomatoes in and then add all the seasonings, including some fresh basil leaves, which I think sounds just gorgeous. I have canned cherry tomatoes with basil leaves before. They don't stay bright green forever, but hopefully make it a small batch. They will stay bright green long enough to be beautiful enough to serve at a party or when my husband has his glasses on. So we'll see. So as long as we're talking about my husband, I'll tell a story on him again. I've told it before, but we have a lot of new folks, so maybe you haven't heard it yet. Years ago, I made pickles. And, you know, with pickles, the fight is always to keep them crunchy, right? So one of the things that'll do that for you is tannins. And tea bags are a great source of tannins. So I can them with tea bags in them. And my husband ate the tea bag. I'm not kidding. He literally ate the tea bag, just kind of grabbed it up together and ate the tea bag. And he says to me, I don't think I like that batch of pickles as much as the ones before. It kind of tasted funny, a little gritty. I'm like, oh my gosh. I looked in the jar, the tea bag was gone. So I have to be very careful about what I add to a jar because it will get eaten. And it could be something, you know, like a tea bag, which you would naturally think he would keep an eye out for, or at least notice that something didn't look like a pickle. That doesn't always happen. You know, he needs to be wearing his glasses when he eats, I guess. But anyway, so this one has some crunchy things in it, right? It calls for whole black peppercorns. Well, if my husband cracks a tooth on this because there's a whole black peppercorn in there, I will never hear at the end of it. So I have ground up some fresh peppercorns. I also don't have any coriander seeds with me. Now I could run down to the garden area and get some because coriander seed is the seed from cilantro when it goes to seed. However, it's another seed issue that I don't necessarily want to have with my husband. So I'm going to use just the tiniest pinch of ground coriander in its place. And then it also calls for mustard seed. And mustard seed I think is going to be fine. I think I don't think he'll have a problem with that. I don't think it's hard enough to break a tooth anyway after candy. And it's so small it'll just kind of go away in there. Okay. Okay, my brine is looking good. As I mentioned, I use allulose, so I really didn't have to wait for it to dissolve. The brand I use is just kind of an instant dissolving in cold water or vinegar or whatever. So I didn't have to worry about that with sugar. But if you're using sugar, it says to boil it for 3 or 4 minutes. Make sure that all the sugar is dissolved. Okay, let's check the pH on that. Okay, I took a little bit of the brine, put it in a dish, and we're going to check the pH. These are the pH strips I use. It's important to get them on the low end of the scale. You know, if you have them for the garden, they don't always go down as low as you'd like them to go for canning purposes. So these go all the way to 0.0. What I'm looking for is 4.6 or below, and I'd like it to be significantly below 4.6 because I'm not testing it with the tomatoes in there. Okay. Between a 2.5 and a 3. Let me see if you can see this a little bit better. Okay, so there it is next to the 3. There it is next to the 2.5. I think it's a 3. What do you think? I think so. Either way, I'm totally good with that measurement. So let's put these away. I will link these. I will link those below. By the way, these are fantastic. This package was, I think, $10, and I've had it for, my goodness, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years, and there's still plenty left in there. So it may seem like $10 may seem like a lot. At least it was $10 when I bought it. It could be $25 now. I don't know, but I'll check and I'll link it down below. All right, so I don't need that anymore. What I do need is my jar. So I'm going to get those out. We're going to pack the tomatoes in. We're going to pack all the seasonings in, and it only processes for 10 minutes. 10 minutes for pints or below. I'm doing half pints, so 10 minutes for that. And we are going to leave a, what is the headspace they'd like me to leave? I assume ½ inch. Yeah, ½ inch headspace. All right, let me get the jars. All the steam gathers in the cups, in the glasses here. Whatever these are. What are these? Jars? Cups, glasses? No, they're jars. So I put 6 in here, optimistically. I don't think I'll get 6 because I halved my tomatoes, and I think I'll end up packing more in a jar than I would have had they been whole. But we're going to go with that. All right, now I need to get my funnel out of the dishwasher. I forgot to grab that this morning. And let's just get some tomatoes in all of these. I'm going to leave them a little shy until I get some of the seasonings in here because I want to be able to kind of poke the basil down the side so you can at least see it. I don't want it to be hidden up at top. I suppose I really need that for the tomatoes. It does make it feel safer. Oops. I'm going to get 6. Now she says to give these 2 to 4 weeks on the shelf before you try them. But I'm I'm going to have to publish this video. So I'm at least going to do a quasi test if I can and take a few of these in a jar with a little bit of brine and let it sit until I get to the point where I'm editing this video, and then I'll tell you what I think about this. Okay. All right, now I'm going to go in order with these things so I don't miss any of the seasonings that go in the jar. Okay, seasonings per pint jar. So again, I'm going to have these. We'll see if I can remember to do that all the way through. Okay, a couple of fresh basil leaves. It says 3. Try to pull off the smaller leaves here. Kind of get them down in the jar just a little bit. That one's not very small. This is basil that I picked last night, and I just forgot to think about what in the earth am I going to do with it this time. I don't need any more pesto. My freeze dryer is full with other things at the moment. So we're going to put it in here, and then I'll make probably I don't know, do some kind of pasta dish for dinner with a ton of basil. Actually, I love to put it in my salad too. That's one of my favorite ways to use fresh basil. But this has been all washed up. It's in a jar of fresh water, which is how it stayed so lovely and green. Okay, there's my basil. I think it's going to be really pretty if I can see it through the balsamic vinegar. I'm already kind of regretting using the dark one, but that's okay. We're going to keep going through this. Okay, basil is in there. Dried oregano, it says a half a teaspoon for a pint jar. I'm just going to use a pinch. I'm not going to measure. Ooh. This is fresh, or not fresh from the garden. This is from the garden and freeze dried. Try not to put all the stems in there. Okay, I made a big mess with that, but I got my oregano in there. The next thing is dill. It says per pint jar, a sprig of dill or a teaspoon of dill seeds. Well, I don't have any fresh dill in the garden right now. However, over the spring, fall, winter, spring, whatever, let's see, I guess it was late winter, early spring, I grew a ton of dill in the garden, and I freeze dried. I think I have almost a gallon of freeze dried dill, which is more dill than I may ever need. It says 1 sprig. Well, we're just going to put some in there. Now, when I've made bruschetta before, dill has not been one of the ingredients. So I kind of think this would be fun. Taste a little fresher that maybe than other versions. We'll see. Okay, the dill is done. Let's look at, ooh, garlic cloves. I need to get those out. Coriander seeds. Again, I'm not going to use the seeds. I'm just going to use the smallest little bit of this. I bought some cheddar garlic today. It is already peeled for me. Let's see. So garlic, which I'll get in a minute, coriander, mustard seeds, half a teaspoon, so a 1/4 teaspoon for my little baby jars. Okay, 1/4 teaspoon. threw them all over the floor. Okay. Black peppercorns. Calls for per pint 4 to 5 whole peppercorns. So I just took some and ground it up, and I'm just gonna put a pinch in there. Okay. Let me get out those garlic pieces. I do have a few extra tomatoes now that will go probably on the top, but as I mentioned, I'm going to keep a couple. Actually, let me just go ahead and put a few in this little dish here so that I'm just going to let it sit in the refrigerator. I'm not going to can it, but at least I can taste the flavor for you, hopefully before this goes to editing. Okay, set that aside. And my garlic, cheddar garlic. I have the frozen garlic, but it's in, the tiny little crushed pieces. And again, I didn't know. My husband made a whole plate of garlic with this one. I don't know. I just don't know. Ooh, that is some seriously strong smelling garlic. It says 2 whole cloves per pint jar. So, say 1 to me for my half-pint jars. I kind of want to get it where it can be part of the pretty picture here. Yes. Now, you should know, won't be as noticeable if you use a dark balsamic, but sometimes vinegar can make the garlic look blue or green, and that is just fine. It is not, it's not a safety issue. It's not going to affect the taste, anything like that. If you want to go ahead and eat your garlic clove, it just sometimes there's some chemical reaction that can make it look kind of Martian-y. Okay, so a couple of these on top. Wish my jars were a little more packed. I'm going to have some floating, but it's okay. I do want to make sure I have plenty to taste. Well, I've got a few to taste. All right, I'm going to put the brine. It won't all fit in my 2-cup jar, will it? Well, I'll put some of it in here. Oh, it did fit. Okay. So we've tested the pH of the brine. We feel good about that. How do we feel about the darkness of the brine? Messing with my pretty jars. Everything else is looking pretty good. Take it up to a 1/2-inch headspace. I will debubble these because we have solids and liquids. Make sure there are no air pockets hiding down there. All right, let's debubble. We'll check the headspace one more time. Don't want to dislodge my pretty things on the side. So when we wipe these rims, I have to be particularly careful of all the little seasonings that may be on the rim, as I just saw here. Okay, let's see. I think my headspace looks good on all of those. So I'm going to wipe the rims with a damp towel. I do want to make sure that, see, there's a little herb that was on the rim there. because I have all these tiny little herbs, I don't want them interfering. 2 more on that one. So that is my biggest concern with something like this. A little piece of dill could screw me up. I will say they smell fantastic. They smell really, really good. Okay. Process for 10 minutes. Now I'm using a steam canner. Same direction, same processing time as a water bath canner. If that's what you have, that's just fine. My jar is not extremely hot anymore because it's been sitting here while I've been stuffing it full. But it is warm enough that I don't expect any kind of thermal shock going on with my hot canner. Okay, so I'm going to bring that up to the little mark on there for my elevation, which is the dark green mark. If you're doing it in a water bath canner, wait until the steam is billowing out, and then you set your timer for 10 minutes. In a water bath canner, at the end of 10 minutes, you're going to take the top off and let it stay in the water for 5 minutes to kind of slowly come down from the heat. Again, you don't want any kind of thermal shock going on. With the steam canner, I'll turn it off after 10 minutes of processing and leave the lid on for 5 minutes, and then I'll take it out. All right, I'm just gonna doctor this. All right, let me grab here's a little lid. It's still a mess. All right, so I'm gonna put that in the fridge, and as I get some more cherry tomatoes, I'll pop those in. All right, I'll meet you back here as soon as the processing is done. Okay, everything is done in here. Let's see how it looks. Floating, as I knew there would be. So I did want to say that I was looking through the book while I was waiting for this to go through, and there are really some very rebellious rebel canning recipes in there. So if you are new to canning, this is not going to be a book for you. If you're very experienced and, well, let's just say if you're very experienced, then it may want to be something you look at. You may not want to do every recipe. There are recipes in here I would definitely not do, but there are recipes in here that I definitely would do. So as I said, I'm going to do a few more recipes for you over the coming weeks, and then try to reserve judgment until then. I think it has possibilities, but it's not going to be for everyone. Okay, I don't have anything looking off. I didn't have any siphoning. You get you the pretty side of a jar. Did have a lot of floating. So next time I would pack these much more firmly with tomatoes. I don't know if you can really see that. I know it's kind of crazy when people shove something up in your face here, but there you go. All right, let's get a taste test done on the Bruschetta cherry tomatoes. They look great. Here is my little tester I set aside. I forgot completely to add more tomatoes, so I only have a couple in here. I have not tasted this yet. So let's see, I think I have 2, literally 2 in here. So let's see. All right, there's my basil. Taste a green one. Oh, you know what? I think I'll taste one by itself and then one on a cracker. How about that? Oh my God, the flavor is fantastic. The flavor is great. Okay, let me get a cracker. Oh, wow. That's really good. Wish I had more in there. Okay, unfortunately I don't have a real plain cracker, so this one is has the seeds, so it will interfere a little bit in the flavor. Ooh, I have two. All right. All right. Ah, get on there. I have garlic and basil in there. All right, I have a red one and a yellow one. We'll put some herbs in there as well. That's a pathetic little taste, isn't it? I love that. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think that is absolutely fantastic. The flavor is so good. I'm gonna make some more of that. I've got a bunch of cherry tomatoes sitting over here, a bunch more out there waiting for me to pick them this week. I'm gonna make another batch of this. That's fantastic.